What is the most ridiculously strict rule a parent you know has had for their child? A friend of mine's parents forced the whole family to pray the rosary every time they were in the car together, no matter how short or long the ride. Once his parents let him get his license, he felt pretty dang liberated. At 22. My cousin was not allowed to watch or read Harry Potter. My uncle and his wife are mega Catholics. She was also not allowed to walk on the road until 14, which meant going to a friend's house involved getting a drive, even 3 doors down. My uncle's wife also told my other aunt, me, other cousin, sister-in-law, stepsister, mother, and co-worker that we were all going to heck for being gay. There's a whole lot of queer in my family. I told her at least the bus ride there would be fun. She had to roll a dice to go out with friends. If it was odd she could go. If even she had to stay in with the family that many days. It's supposed to make her value her family time and stop her being out so much. All I ever saw it do was reduce her to a sobbing mess. I will forever regret not telling the C father he was indeed a C that day. I got a N64 for Christmas from my uncle, and I could only play it for half an hour every week, starting from the second I turned it on, and loading times and waiting for the machine to start all counted as time playing. The only game I had for the longest time was Super Mario 64. Didn't get very far with that. No movies with even one swear word, no matter how old the kid is. They range from 8 to 18, and they follow all the age restrictions. It was a huge shock and disappointment to the family when Mrs. Weasley said, "Not my daughter, you be in Harry Potter," so I guess they won't be watching that film again. They are Mormon though. Another woman, a friend of a friend, doesn't let her 5-year-old see anything in which a person aims a gun at another person. If they have a gun, it has to be aimed at a target, like at a shooting range or something, I guess. I don't know how long the rule will be in place, but the kid will never get to see Pirates of the Caribbean for a long time. She has other strict rules too. This is the only one I can remember. Fair enough, she doesn't want him to be scared or subjected to extreme violence, but even family films have guns. She can't keep him sheltered forever. Better to have knowledge on something than have it hidden away. Oh, remembered another. My 18-year-old friend was banned by her mum from using one train station in the next city. Not too strict, but just weird. Suddenly she decided it was bad and full of druggies, and she didn't want my friend near it. So instead of going to that station, even though it was less than 5 minutes away, we had to walk through the city in the dark for 20 minutes to make it to the safer station. My friend refused to even just lie to her mum and say she got on somewhere else. Not allowed to eat anything without asking for it, otherwise it was stealing. Literally, anything. And the request was denied pretty often. Not allowed to hang out with friends, or go on dates with a GF, which was allowed, but obviously couldn't host. The truth was not factual, but rather opinion based. If I think it happened, it happened. Not allowed to watch TV or use the computer unless grades were a B or higher. The catch: couldn't use the computer for schoolwork. Had to use a library computer at school. Not allowed to read anything other than school textbooks or assigned reading unless grades were B or above. Not allowed to have a cell phone unless grades were B or above. The list goes on and on. The best part is that I thought it was all normal until my junior year of high school. And the kicker of it all was that despite graduating high school with a 3.4 GPA, I spent my life from age 11-17 been grounded for all but 3 months. Spent a summer with my grandmother 500 miles away, not because of grades, but because of the food thing. Sometimes my father would forget that he ate something, and then blame it on me. If I denied it, I was lying and stealing, and therefore I was grounded with all the stipulations shown above and plenty more. He made the mistake of emancipating me when I was 17 so that he could legally kick me out, something that he could hold over my head. He thought that I was afraid of leaving, and that I wouldn't have anywhere to go. Joke's on him though. Moved in with a teacher who was like a parent to me for a few months. Got a job, rented my own apartment and biked 10 miles to school every day until graduation. In bed by 8:30 on Friday and Saturday even when me and his other friends were staying over. A different friend wasn't allowed to use the computer. That was in his own room, after his parents went to bed. Depending on how old you are, the second one sounds fair. A friend's mom was a severe helicopter parent. In order to go to the movies with a girl, this kid had to sneak out of his house, bike 5 miles to the girl's house, and then finally take her to the movies. After the movie, he biked back home and carefully snuck back into his room. Within 5 minutes his mom knocked on his door. I forgot to mention it was 1 PM at this point. He opened his door and his mom was standing there with her iPad pulled up to the IMDb page for the movie he saw, and she asked him what his favorite part was. Then she grounded him for 1 month. I asked this girl I recently met to come to her party with me, and her excuse for not going was that her parents said she couldn't be out later than midnight. She was 24. At first I thought it was just a terrible way to reject me, but then we ended up hanging out by sneaking her out of her window really late at night. At 24, I haven't done anything like that since I was in middle school. Insane parents. My cousins weren't allowed to stay in the classroom when the class said the pledge. Apparently it implied that God liked war. They also were only allowed to watch Animal Planet, and if they ever wanted to do anything they had to ask their dad. I mean anything, like going to the bathroom or sitting in the living room. There are tons of other things, but I can't think of any right now. I had a friend, sorta, who couldn't be friends with someone unless they, 1. agreed to a friend request on Facebook from her parents, 2. went to church every Sunday without fail, 3. came and asked permission to be able to hang out with her. We were both girls, so I don't understand why the last one was necessary. Our friendship lasted a few years with only hanging out at school, then eventually her parents starting rubbing off on her, so I was told not to contact her again as I never attended church and was therefore a bad influence, devil's spawn. My stepmom's rules. I could only use tampons, never pads, to prepare me for the real world. No letter grades below a B, though I guess that's not that strict. No makeup even though I had really embarrassing acne. No hairstyle besides a high ponytail, so I won't get lice. I could use no backpack besides a really huge Harry Potter one she saved and mailed in Coca-Cola box tops for. I had to read every Harry Potter book, despite not being into it at all. No touching, sitting on, or laying on her and my dad's bed except when putting her duvet into its cover. I could go on. I, but not my brother, was not allowed to attend parties unless she came with me. My brother and I were only allowed to drink water, except the rare occasion spaghetti was for dinner. We were allowed juice with our spaghetti. I had to put the conditioner and shampoo in their exact spots in the shower, or I'd get beaten grounded. Once a week I had to clean the cracks of the kitchen floor with a toothbrush. If we had a friendess over, she must hang out with us. As soon as I started menstruating, she made it clear that if I got pregnant I would have to keep the baby, and once I gave birth it would automatically go to her and be her child. No exceptions. No offering food to guests. Food is for the family. No hot lunch, and no accepting parts of a hot lunch from friends. Only the sandwich, Little Debbie cake, lemonade thermos, and fruit cup we had to pack each night before bed. Either my brother or I had to make her toast every morning in this exact way. Toast it, spread butter on it first, then spread peanut butter on top of it, making sure no black can be seen, then remove the crust. No exceptions. This one isn't as much a strict rule, but a ridiculous required act. About every 3 weeks, we'd buy ground beef in bulk, and my brother and I would have to spend 1.5 hours putting exactly 1 pound of ground beef into its own individual Ziploc bag, using a letter scale to make sure they're exactly 1 lb. Then we'd have to use a rolling pin to completely flatten the balls of ground beef into squares that completely fill their Ziploc bag. Do this with each ball of ground beef, Ziploc it closed, put them all in even piles in the freezer. Another ridiculous requirement. She got my dad a juicer and made him carrot juice every day. This juicer had 50 pieces of varying and awkward sizes. My brother and I had to clean each individual piece with a tiny brush, soap and water after each use, daily. This took at least 30 minutes. Those rules are totally arbitrary. I don't know much about it, but I'm sure someone will point you to our narcissists. I thought it might be nice to introduce my girlfriend to my parents next week. Not allowed alone in the same room together with the door closed. I am 36. We are not visiting. I had a friend in middle school whose parents restricted the number of fiction books she was allowed to read. She and I both really enjoyed reading. So we'd go to used bookstores and bring home stacks of novels. Not trashy ones either, this was quality young adult fiction. Her parents would immediately confiscate hers and would hand back one for every 3 non-fiction books she read and wrote a book report about in her free time, not for school. Another example that really stands out is the Halloween we went trick-or-treating together. Toward the end of the night, she got really quiet and weird, and I finally got it out of her that as soon as she got home, her parents would take all the candy she'd collected and dump it in the bowl to hand out to the trick-or-treaters who came to their door. Middle school Jill would have none of that. I told her to sort through her candy and give me all the best stuff, so I could keep it safe for her at my house. Every few weeks for the rest of the school year, I'd deliver her a Ziploc bag of candy. It felt like a drug exchange, the way her eyes would light up and she'd hurriedly shove the bag in the bottom of her backpack. Sad. My dad used to raid my backpack like once a week when he got home and ripped up every paper he found because my handwriting wasn't as good as it could be and would tell me that if I was really paying attention in school I would remember what I wrote on the papers. I had AP English and was writing 20-page essays and that little sucker always got to them and if I tried to hide them I got the crap beat out of me. I later learned my dad was a rimhead. Dude. I'm in AP English now and if anyone so much as smudged my essays I'd probably rage. I was at a friend's house and brought my laptop and Xbox. Well, we were playing Halo 3 in the middle of the night and we heard footsteps walking up the steps. We both jolted up and put Halo out and Madden in. His mother was supremely strict video games and she would allow him to play anything above E. So we just make it and the inserted game starts doing the EA Sports. It's in the game. This, of course, is suspicious because it was just the beginning of the game and our facial expressions. Right when his mom gets in, the bee that she was, demanded to search the Xbox memory. Of course she didn't find anything. She was too idiotic. So she gets up and just gets to the door when she turns back. "Let me see your laptop," the bee said. Now this I had a huge problem with. We hadn't even used it yet, which I told but she wouldn't listen and kept yelping. So I hesitantly hand her the laptop, almost positive that I hadn't erased the P the night before. She opens the laptop, opens the internet tab, and it starts loading. This happened a good while and I was almost shaking with relief. But that feeling avalanche to freaking fear when the page pops up. A good 20 tabs of it, was shown on top of the screen. It went from amateur to BBW insertions. To make matters worse, I had the Halo 3 disc hidden in the front of pants. So now it seemed like I have a boner. The bee came to the conclusion that we had to buy the P, so she told me to pay her $200 by bucks or leave. I left. I had to walk home and by the time I got back it was about 2 AM. My parents were already notified and were P. I had a friend whose parents once grounded her for coming home from school late. She just stopped at the library to return some books. They wouldn't let her eat for 2 days. Thankfully, she told a teacher at school and was taken away from her parents and now lives with her grandmother. No electronics until 5 o'clock and never on Saturdays or Sundays. The kids were 18 and 20 attending college but living at home. Also OP, make sure to move your answer to the comment section so the post isn't deleted. I was not permitted to use sanitary pads as an 11-year-old because my mother thought I would set the women's movement back. I had no idea what to do with a tampon. WTH. One of my sister's friends had to call her mom every day in college. Apparently her mom said if she didn't call one day she would call the police to check on her. She should have let her call the police. I can see the police helping the girl. Parents divorced when I was young. Lived with my mom except for 6 months in high school, while my mom was recuperating from a serious illness. My father's rules. I wasn't allowed to ride the school bus. He would drop me off at school each morning, and I would walk home each evening. We lived 1 mile from my high school and I was allowed 15 minutes to make the walk. Any longer meant I was obviously doing something I shouldn't and resulted in grounding. Any friend had to first meet my father and pass muster before we could spend time together. In the 6 months I lived with him I went to one movie with a friend. My father drove us there. Halfway through the movie an usher came into the theater and told me I had a call at the concession stand. It was my father, making sure we hadn't left the theater. He picked us up after the movie was over, Friend spent the night. 10:30 p.m. Curfew. She never came back. No other friends made. No dating. My stepmother routinely, and without notice, rifled my personal belongings to make sure I didn't have drugs, birth control, or prohibited, by my father, reading material. He went through my backpack and inspected my library books. Limited television. Only things rated G or PG. I was 16. For those reasons and some other dickish behavior, I've had no contact with him for over a decade. If he predeceases me, I won't attend his funeral. I had a friend who had all her internet access logged and keyloggers installed on every computer in her house. A portable Linux flash drive was pretty useful. A guy I used to play LOL with didn't get to play past 10 p.m. at night because his parents wanted him to sleep then, even when he wasn't in school the next day, but he still did. He played on his laptop in bed. We were on Skype with him but he didn't speak because he didn't want his parents to know. But sometimes his parents would come in and you could hear him throwing his laptop under a blanket and pretending to sleep. Then they would start arguing and he would AFK the entire game and not come back until the next day. He was 18 at this time. Really weird. People asking if his gaming affected school and the answer is no. He was a very good student. Best grades. Even got an award for best grades or something like that. Maybe it's tough love but he deserves to choose what he does in his spare time when he's an adult. My dad threatened to take my laptop and phone. I paid for the service many times into my 20s. Even after I became a rent-paying tenant in their house, my dad overparented. 9 and 11-year-old. No eating certain things without asking both of their parents. No video games or any electronics on weekdays. Can't say that something sucks. I.e., oh, I hate doing that, it sucks. Bedtime is 8 o'clock. On Halloween they could only have 2 candies. When they come over on the weekends they have to stay outside as long as the sun is out. For a period of time they weren't allowed inside when one of the other older kids were inside because a group of us was caught playing cards and gambling with M&Ms. I'm currently 18, live in Australia, and I would have absolutely no freedom if my mum had her way. Recently I've just refused and it's given me some breathing space, but while she's paying for my education, I have to do what she says. I've been tutored since I was 6 years old. I have never been to a sleepover in case I get physically shamed or the male host of the family slips me something. This is not exaggerated. I have never received pocket money. Before I go to bed, I have to hand over my phone and iPad and all electronics. When I was younger, I did own a DS Lite, but the only game I was allowed to play was Brain Training. I only started playing Pokemon when a hand-me-down Game Boy was passes to me later on. Thank you, Asian parents. My friend who recently moved out into her own place had a 10 o'clock curfew every night when she still lived with her mom. This wouldn't be too bad if she was a younger teenager or something, but she just turned 24. This was the same mother who thought I smoked weed at 10 years old because I wasn't high strung like other girls my age. Kid in my 5th grade class. Couldn't eat dairy, wasn't lactose intolerant, meat, or any kind of junk food, even on her birthday. Also couldn't watch PG or above related movies. I was raised without cable TV. My mother used to have us kids march out front of Planned Parenthoods with signs before we were old enough to understand what was going on. They unlearned their craziness rapidly, but it was strict as heck growing up. I had a roommate in college whose parents, long story short, tried to get me listed as a diddler because I was gay. Anyway, the guy was okay. When his parents weren't listening or visiting, I had asked him about growing up with them. They were strict. They were also fundamentalist Christians. This was his routine in high school. 5:30, he must be awake, showered, shaved, etc. Ready for morning prayer. 5:40, can only start eating breakfast at that time, no earlier or later. If he started at 5:41 he would have to skip breakfast. 5:55, homework check, cleanliness check, devil check. They would make sure he wasn't touching himself at night. 6:05 off to school. Not regular high school but a tutor from their church that taught 3 other boys. They would periodically call the tutor and make sure he was behaving and loving Jesus. 4:30 they pick him up from school. 5 o'clock 5:15. Upon arriving home he would pray, shower, then homework, Only when homework is done is when he would be allowed to eat dinner. He is then required to do chores, clean the dishes, clean every room. If there is still light out, was the car. Finally, if he was done early and was exceptionally good, they would listen to hymns on the computer. Then bed by 8. If he spoke without being spoken to, they would splash him with holy water. If he got anything other than an A, he would be locked in his room, no food or bathroom. The worst was taking the Lord's name in vain. The parents could, but if he did, they would lock him in the closest and force him to pray. That's all that he told me. His mom was the worst of it. He is the one who led the crusade against me and my sinful ways. They would have a 24-hour link on his computer or something and heard everything in our dorm room. I honestly felt bad for the kid. Apparently they harassed all his professors for their lesson plans and sent them back with corrections. When one of my favorite professors disregarded her lesson plan, she wrote a letter to the dean saying that he was trying to corrupt her child. He taught physics, and apparently she wanted him to explain everything as a matter of how Jesus wanted it to happen. Jesus created gravity because he wanted us to stay in this paradise that was created for us, etc. Eventually my school expelled him because of his crazy parents. I feel bad for him. I hear he ran away and is living in the Philippines now. My best friends, twin brothers, weren't allowed to watch Seinfeld because it had too much adult content. I only bring this up because the mother was a debaucher, xenophobic, unemployed alcoholic who beat them both growing up. But Seinfeld was going to damage them. You must get permission from an adult to use the bathroom. That way an adult can unlock the door for you and monitor how long you are in there. Kids 12, 10 and 3. My brother's good friend was invited to spend the week at a beach house we rented that was about 6 hours away. The beach house was about 6 hours away. His parents say that he cannot go unless my parents are driving him. We were taking 2 cars because they don't trust my brother to drive more than 4 hours at once without sleeping. He was an extremely sheltered kid, though. During his freshman year of college he started dating freaking his first cousin. Parents disowned him after that. They have a kid now. Last I checked his Facebook. There was a girl I used to go to high school with who literally sprinted at top speed to each class because her mom told her the devil would dang her to heck if she didn't. Wasn't really a rule, but my girlfriend's parents, this was 12 years ago, I'm married to someone else, thank God, now, tried to inform us of how close we could be when holding hands. Must have 6 inches between our hands and our legs. All I could think is, I'm freaking your daughter and you're worried about us holding hands? I have a friend who just turned 30. He is forbidden from getting tattoos because his father has it mandated in his will that upon his death his kids will be inspected by a physician, and if they have any, will not be entitled to anything in the will. Friend of mine isn't allowed to close her bedroom door even when changing or sleeping. She's not allowed to lock the bathroom door. Parents won't let her go to parties and take her iPad away if she's being bad. She's 20 years old. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.